Yes, sir. We have officially started. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and assalamu alaikum to all the viewers, and a very good evening to you all. I am Raisa, and I will be hosting you all for EiFAC Exchanging Ideas for a Change. Today, on this auspicious day of 23rd April of 2020, we will be discussing with a very distinguished guest who has joined us from all the way from United States, and he's none other than Professor Dr. Ali Riaz, sir. He is a distinguished professor at the Illinois State University for the Department of Politics and Governance. He is also an alma mater for University of Dhaka and University of Hawaii and has a lot of awards and honors under his sleeves. Sir, how are you?
Fine, thank you, Raisa. I hope you are well, and I do welcome everyone who is joining us in this wonderful evening. Hopefully, it is a better evening than the last one.
Yes, sir. Hopefully, every evening it gets better with time. Sir, so first of all, I would like to start by asking you how the condition is at Illinois now that where you are living at the moment. How is COVID affecting?
It is definitely not as good as we would have expected. Unfortunately, we're going through quite a number of fatalities. It is being tested. A large number of people are being tested, and many of them are turning out to be positive. According to our governor, Pritzker, he's suggesting and talking to the expert that peak is yet to be reached. However, over the last week or so, the number of people who have unfortunately died have not been as large numbers as it used to be the previous week. I mean, so it's getting better, but it is slow, and we are unfortunately afraid that it might peak at a later time. Some are suggesting it might be the middle of the May that we might see a worse situation dawning on us.
All right, sir. I really hope that you and your family would be well within this time of.
Is the line dropped? I couldn't hear you anything.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think you got dropped. So let's start again.
Yes, sir. I think I will re-ask the question, and I'm very sorry for the internet issue. Sir, so the question
We can
was
get
that
to
now
we
that
can get to the yeah. Go ahead, please.
Okay, sir. So my question was basically that now that most of us are under lockdown, or most of us who are not, affected, we are under self quarantine. So my question is that what should the government be doing apart from trying to handle the crippling health sector all over the world? Like, what other steps should the government around the world should be taking as of now?
Right? It depends on the countries that you are in, particularly if you are talking about Bangladesh, since we are mostly talking to the Bangladeshis here. The first and foremost for the Bangladesh government is to ensure that people who are in a difficult circumstances, particularly those in the poor and middle class, lower middle class, and those who are wage laborers and others, ensure food. Plain and simple thing that they will have to do. How they will do it, how the distribution system would be created. That is the modalities of it that we can discuss at length. And in some cases, I will defer it to the experts. I'm not a distribution expert, and I am sure there are many, many, many of them in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh has made a major stride, major success in doing so. As a matter of fact, in this instance, I think the Bangladeshi non-governmental organizations have done an extremely good job over the years, tap into their expertise, involve them. It is not only government's job to say that, we are going to do it. Government needs to take the leadership, but it should not, and I cannot reiterate again more than many times that it should not actually try to do everything, because it is not possible. Bangladesh state has a capacity, and all states have constraints of the capacity. When you have these kind of resources like a non-governmental organization, you tap it. This is the reason that they should be there, and I'm sure that is a primary thing. Second thing that they need to do is to ensure that those who are in this kind of situation, whether and I say, if you don't mind me using you and me as examples, even if I had been in Dhaka or anywhere, I would have been in a better situation than most of. A BRAC study has shown that in the first weeks, people have lost food. 14% of them didn't have food. If we look at the other data, we also see those kind of things. Having said that, so the first thing is the food security. Ensure people are not dying. Why people are going out? In many instances, they're going out for that. Second thing is to stream that in future, next week. It's not only today's food. Make sure that it is there. Often there is a false equivalence being created in Bangladesh and in some other places too, but it is a choice between life and livelihood. I think it's a false choice. It's a false equivalence. People have to leave. If you don't leave, the livelihood doesn't matter. But people who have only depending on livelihood, they have nothing but to put their life. That is the only asset they have. That is the only asset. So that is what I would insist, that is the first thing to be done. And ensure the second thing, that everyone, whoever has the symptoms, needs to be tested for sake of that person and the community. The community transmission has been already there. Now it is time to somehow limit it and identify. Third thing that I would say, please, 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 and I beg, right? I'm begging to the Bangladesh government. If I could, I would have stand in front of the Bangladeshi government and ask, and as a Bangladeshi citizen, everyone has a right to know. The extent, if it is small, so be it. Tell people that this is the fact. If you hide the fact, then people think that it is not that important or not that serious. The depth of this problem, the crisis, the catastrophe, has to be understood individually. Understood individually. Had it been a flood, let's say it had been a flood in Bangladesh, what would we have done? Would we have actually tried to say that, this part has not been inundated? It is inundated. So take it like that. That's why Bangladeshi citizens have right to claim, and as a citizen, they should press up on the government. I, outside from Bangladesh, I was born in Bangladesh, and based on that, I'm begging, please, please, do not hide, do not hide, do not hide.
Thank you, sir. I think you speak for most of the population of the country that we need to know what's actually happening, as we are all very locked down and we don't really know what's happening. So, sir, I think during COVID-19 and that we have all locked down, as you said, a lot of people are out of food or the basic necessities that they need for for them to live life properly, there has been an increase in the crime rates. For example, 2 days back, there was a report that there was a mass shooting at Canada, at Nova Scotia, and there have also been reported a lot of robbery happening in Bangladesh as well. So in that case, what do you think the Bangladesh can do with the forces that they have, or whatever instruments that they have, to actually tackle these sort of other issues that COVID-19 is bringing within the country?
First of all, the Canadian situation is very unusual circumstances. I was very shocked to see that this kind of thing happened in Nova Scotia. Canada didn't have this kind of heinous crimes publicly and this kind of mass shooting. It is very unusual circumstances. However, let us not criminalize the whole thing. It is not a security concern in the first place. Human security concern is the first. That we need to take. If you are citing the figures, I can cite you just the opposite. The United States, which didn't see a mass school shooting in March for decades. For the first time last March, we didn't see any mass shooting in the school. So the crime rate has gone down. So it is not the criminal activities that we should be looking at. It's a law and order situation. I know in all cases in Canada, in the United States, in Bangladesh, elsewhere, the police are now at the forefront, the front line for dealing with this COVID-19 situation. So, and there's a limit to it. And I'm not going to suggest that the police should use heavy-handed, or the law enforcing should be heavy-handed. Try to understand that what they're coming from. So the security dimension, the criminal activities that you were suggesting, I would say it's a very limited one so far. I'm afraid it might be going up post-COVID if things come down, if the economic situation doesn't. That's a different issue that we'll deal with when it comes to that. Prior to that, let us not criminalize this issue. Let us not think that it is a security concern. Livelihood, life is more important at this point. Let us protect everyone, all citizens, whichever the country is.
All right, thank you, sir, for showing us a different dimension, that this kind of issue should not be securitized as of yet. Sir, for example, I would like to bring about the infrastructural projects that have been happening around the world. And I think I would obviously bring in the Bangladeshi situation. For example, the major infrastructure project that was happening before COVID-19 hit us was the railway and everything. So, sir, like once COVID-19 ends, I think our concentration would be somewhere else. But for these infrastructural projects, what should the government be doing? Should we be asking for help from intergovernmental organizations or international organizations? Because, countries like China and Thailand, they were very much involved in such infrastructural projects that were happening in Bangladesh. So how does that perspective change if COVID-19 ends, and what will happen then, you think?
For Bangladesh, first and foremost, looking into all these developmental projects, the infrastructural development projects need to be revisited, plain and simple. At this point, the planning for Bangladesh should be based on not a single budget. I think it should be a midterm, 2 to 3 years project that they should be thinking about, that how this is going to. Many of these infrastructural projects of money that should be diverted immediately as much as possible for taking care of the food and livelihood issues such as economic activities, cash transfer, those sort of things should be considered. There should be a diversion of these funds to create health infrastructure as much possible. We're not going to have a health infrastructure nowhere in the world that can actually take care of a pandemic at the very first day. There will be crisis. I am not suggesting, because it's an impossible thing to imagine that this would happen, and you cannot be prepared for that in the sense that you have all the hospitals with all the ICUs, all the hospitals with all the ventilators. That's not going to happen. We're not suggesting. But in case of Bangladesh, the health infrastructure was fragile. If not, it was, anything else, it was very fragile, particularly outside Bangladesh. So let us look at those things. You are suggesting what they should be doing in terms, should they go to the international community? Bangladesh has already requested a significant amount of money. I have those numbers from Asian Development Bank, World Bank, IMF. Even they went to the Chinese, this international bank that the Chinese have created. Those will be necessary. But two things here, if I may, two things here. First of all, monetary. whatever the government is doing at this point, particularly this whole notion of the stimulus, where the money is going, what are the monitoring process that these are actually being used. Second thing is a visible infrastructure development has not taken Bangladesh anywhere. I understand the necessity of it. However, the myth, I call it myth nowadays, because the myth of the growth, the GDP growth. Look what happened 2 weeks down the line, and here 14% people don't have food. What the disparity that has created. So it is time to look back. It is not only getting money. You can get the money. When you are getting the money from International One, don't think it is a dole out money. This is borrowing. You are putting Bangladeshi future into mortgage. Basically, it's a mortgaging the future. So revisit these things. Infrastructure development is necessary, but at this point, there are more important elements, more important concerns, more important things are at front of us. COVID-19 is not going to go away. Its implications would not go away as the virus taper down. I don't think that is going to happen. So it is a time to revisit Bangladeshi economy's policies, because let me finish with this. Let us not forget, before the COVID-19 hit Bangladeshi economy was showing signs of strain. Other than the remittances, we were not seeing any upswing, rather a downturn in the Bangladeshi economies in all indicators. This is an opportunity in that sense to revisit these economic policies and see what can be done with a longer term perspective.
Thank you, sir. So I think one thing that everyone is actually sort of, I think, mentally prepared to face is the economic recession that would follow after COVID-19 ends, because many other experts say that once COVID-19 ends, or at least once the vaccine is found, and that the number of affected people actually downfall, there would be an economic recession. And for countries like Bangladesh, or for any developing countries, or for any LDCs, or any Asian countries who already have an uprising number of international debt, or more so, how do you think in that sense, what can the countries do? Like, what should be the next step for these governments who are just developing but also affected by COVID-19?
There is already talk about debt relief. That is one way, the international companies. However, there should be some reservation with respect to debt relief. I'm not suggesting that it is wrong, but there should be qualification, because in many countries, what happened, debt relief would actually encourage corruption. Money that has been brought in the name of the people have been abused not by the citizens. And take any country, I'm not suggesting only Bangladesh. In case of Pakistan, for example, or for many other African countries that we have seen. So debt relief is one way, but debt relief is not the way out, because if the debt relief means you're not paying back, that means the money you have taken and which have been abused, which have been misappropriated, they find the justification. So debt relief is one. The second thing is that I am opposed to this neoliberal idea that austerity should be the other one. I'm not, because look where the neoliberal policies right from the Margaret Thatcher and Reagan era has brought us. These are the things. State withdrew. That's why in Britain, national health system, the NHS is in a dire situation. The privatization policies that Bangladesh pursued created more beautiful and in some cases excellent hospitals, but there's nothing for the people who are on the street and in the rural areas. That's why this calls for a reinvention, so to speak. Actually, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It is there. Look at the economic policies. Look at the economic policies and see how the money that you are bringing in, borrowing, again, mortgaging the future of a nation. That's why transparency matters. That's why accountability matters. I am in favor of, at this point, in case of Bangladesh, that there should be a clear other accountability mechanism. Bangladesh's current situation requires huge sum of money to be borrowed, and they will borrow it. And I'm not opposing that one. It is necessary to borrow those money. However, only government and the current mechanism is not sufficient. Be transparent, be accountable, be inclusive, so that every citizen knows where the money is going, because it is their future that the government is mortgaging. Then they have a right to know, they should know, and there should be an inclusive process.
Yes, sir, absolutely, sir, you're right. But, sir, I do have a follow-up question to this that, we have our government or many government offices have always been allegedly or actually accused of being corrupted. So any money that we actually borrow from international organizations like IMF or any or other states, like how would we, like as a citizen, how would we even know that it's being used in the right places? Or as you said, that our country lacks transparency. So in that case, what do you think should be done as a democratic state, as a citizen of a democratic country? What should the citizens be actually doing for for asking for accountability from the government?
It is pretty much tied to the overall political structure. You have described it as democratic. I personally consider Bangladesh as a hybrid regime. I've discussed that one, and here is my plug to my book, with respect to the understanding the Bangladesh. As a citizen, wherever you are, it is not only about Bangladesh. It is about the United States. It's about Pakistan, India, or wherever you are. Uh, demand the transparency, particularly with respect to a system that has both vertical and horizontal accountability. At this point, given the very, very, very flawed, actually, if I may quote economist, a transparently fraudulent election has taken place in 2008, and 2018. This is I'm quoting economist, and we know, I know what happened. The point is that create a transparent mechanism, an accountability mechanism, or demanding that is not out of the politics. We are seeing the demise of politics in Bangladesh, which is unfortunate. But yet, there are very little voices that is coming up and suggest, and raising this point. You and I, if we consider ourselves a Bangladeshi citizen for the moment, let me take that role, put that ad, suggest that demand this is your right. If this is a state, a republic, so to speak, citizen and the government, there's a contract. State and citizens have entered into a social contract.
Yes.
Demand to uphold.
Understandable. Sir, so if we go to the international arena of what's happening to COVID-19, I would like to ask, United States has been saying that the entire concept of COVID-19 or the spread of COVID-19 was done intentionally by the Chinese. Sir, what do you think? Is this even possible that a mass scale of biochemical weaponry, using COVID-19 to actually demolish whatever the West have built economically? Is that even possible, you think? Like, would a country go to such extreme length to come to their own political end?
First of all, I am not yet convinced that it was deliberately created as a bioweapon. I haven't seen anything beyond the realm of conspiracy theory. So I discount that one, that China deliberately created a bioweapon and unleashed it on the West. That is, at this point, I would call it outrageous. There are two possibilities that has happened, to my understanding. Number one, given that Wuhan had a level 4 biolab, could it happen that they missed it? Could it happen that it leaked? It is possible. It doesn't have to be intended to. It is very much possible. That's why transparency matters. China should allow international community to look into it. It becomes a more possible. I'm not suggesting it happened, because in 2018 there were concerns by Americans who have at that point written email and everything that they have some concern with respect to the security structure, and security means the biosecurity kind of thing, that it may leak. So international community should look into it, whether there was inadvertently it happened. The second possibility that it came out of the wet market in Wuhan. Is that a possibility? Yes, that is a possibility. So far, that has been the primary argument. And I think, given the scientists have backed it, I am more leaning towards that. Having said all these things, your question is whether China would do it. Whether China would do it is to me, is a secondary question. My primary question is China going to take the responsibility for it? Which one I'm suggesting? The lack of transparency between first identification in January, sometime in December 10th or so, and reporting it to World Health Organization in Beijing office on the night of 31st of December. 21 days have passed. 21 days have passed, and those who identified were either persecuted, silenced, threatened. Did that help? Did China actually provide the information that needed, such as human-to-human transmission? Did China actually conceal those things, or didn't take it seriously? I'm not an expert on this bio thing, weapons or that much of molecular or cellular biology kind of thing. However, I would like to know. I would like to know, because this has spread, whether Chinese role has played any contributed to it. China should be held accountable for those. The way our president, Mr. Trump, is suggesting, I'm opposed to that. World Health Organization's role, we'll look into it, but WHO should not be an apparatus to take on China, and this is not the right time. We'll raise these questions, we'll put those things on the table, but let us deal with the lives that is on the stake, and then we'll see what China did or didn't do. Maybe China would come up clean. I don't know. Maybe China would come up clean. It is possible, but putting them, exploring them via a very neutral international body is absolutely necessary.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I think before we actually move to the questions that were posed by the viewers of this show, I would like to ask the final question, which was, sir, I mean, after COVID-19 ends, when the pandemic is a little bit more stabilized, or maybe, gets into a better situation, do you think that the balance of power might shift to the Chinese or to the east of the world? I mean, is it possible, according to you?
It is a possibility. It is a possibility that there will be tilt to Chinese influence, sphere of influence. That is a possibility. The way I see it currently, it is we are standing at the crossroads of history. We're at the cusp of a new kind of order that might emerge, it might not, because it is a once in a century kind of situation. The global order did change previously when we had a pandemic like this 100 years ago, but there are other factors. Having said that, the question is somewhat different to me, that the extension of Chinese sphere of influence means what? Is it not only money? I'm talking about the system of governance. An authoritarian system, non-inclusive system, that practically doesn't bother about your voices and your participation. Is that the right way to go? China has succeeded in containing Wuhan. That narrative that China has produced, I'm still not convinced with that. Because the first, I have already mentioned about the lack of transparency that has contributed, definitely it has the potential to contribute to spread. The second thing, we don't know the exact figure of the death anymore. If you have considered the number of people who have died, then that creates, if we had known that, say, 20, 40,000 people have died in war, then Italy would not have taken it so lightly that they have done, and might not have contributed to the European spread and to the United States. So the Chinese, whether it would tilt, there are a lot of unanswered questions. However, the global order needs to be changed for a different reason. It's not China versus, don't get into this dichotomy of China versus the United States or the West. I am rather more interested to see a global order that actually takes care of the people. The security-centric approach, that is, we have seen, the national security-centric, that is, the state security, have become predominant. That needs to be revisited because the human security paradigm has been pushed aside, as if our lives don't matter. The globalization needs to be reset because it is absolutely necessary. And we've seen that this is not working for the most of the people. The global order needs to be changed. But this dichotomy, this idea that it is China versus the United States slash West, China contained, so did South Korea. South Korea had a wonderful election. Imagine that in the midst of this, South Korea had a successful election. Just they didn't have to be draconian in containing those. If we are talking that China succeeded, Iran failed. Authoritarian government Iran failed. Abject failure of Iran. So authoritarian system by definition doesn't provide a better option. It actually takes away a lot of things. So let us not buy into uncritically the Chinese narrative that this is the best course of action.
All right, sir. So I think we will have to move to the questions given by our viewers. Sir, one of the questions has been given by a student from BRAC University named Shoykot Mojumdar. He said that he actually asked that the chain of supply of funds that teaches countries and in need is a problem at the moment. Could you, sir, please explain how the mechanism can be reached using regional hubs for logistics and other goods? So I think what he means is that how much can we use the logistics that we have at the moment? How can government use it to its full potential?
There are three things, and again, let me qualify my answer with a preamble that I'm not an expert on the distribution system. That's not me. I wish I was, but I have enough confidence on the Bangladeshi experts who have worked on the field. Unlike me, who's talking, sitting here, thousands of miles away. Bangladeshi, I mentioned about the NGO network. And if you look at the Bangladeshi infrastructure of Bangladesh army to take into account, and Bangladesh army has served in difficult circumstances as part of United Nations International Peacekeeping Force in very, very difficult situation. They have confronted Ebola, to my knowledge, and if I'm not wrong, if someone correct me, to my knowledge, they have confronted this kind of situation. So they have this expertise, and the distribution network has this NGO networks that can be used. Then the Bangladesh, fund transfer, for example, cash fund transfer that we are talking about to a certain extent, can be done through these networks of various kind of these micro financial institutions and the BUPGAC and other things that they've created. There are various ways, and what needs to be done is bringing all of them together. There's some sort of a task force, a national committee, whatever. You look into this distribution system. The most important thing that at this point to me, that food. And Bangladesh is fortunate that having this Boro harvest, a bumper crop, let's make sure that this is harvested and this is taken, good. Make sure that the farmers get the money that they need. How do you do it is the question that those who are on the ground have a vast experience. Let me emphasize it that they have an experience. Their resources, their expertise needs to be tapped in to find out how Bangladesh can do it, and Bangladesh can do it. Bangladesh is a, excellent resilience capacity. It has turned around from difficult circumstances. I know it's not like this, but they've done it. There is an infrastructure to look into it that can provide the opportunities to serve the people. They've done it. Let's tap into it. Let's create, instead of trying to do everything, let's do it. See how the distribution can be. Cash transfer, food, and other things.
All right. Thank you, sir. Sir, the final question from one of our viewers, sir, would be from Fayaz Kobir. Sir, he asks that should Bangladesh actually reopen their economy to some extent within this lockdown to actually tackle any sort of recession that would follow after the pandemic ends?
When should Bangladesh open? This is a good question in the sense that this is a question we are confronting in the United States. Some of the states have taken a step. Georgia opened it, and in some ways, actually, it was politically motivated because the President Trump initiated this so-called "liberate Michigan" kind of, rhetoric. And as we know, as I would describe, that it is Mr. Trump's fault to a great extent that we are in this mess. I preface this one because so that you don't, someone doesn't blame me that you are not critical to the U.S. administration for their downright failure and the President Trump's irresponsible act. I am opposed to that. When should Bangladesh open? This is a question for the experts, the public health experts. At this point, the first, foremost, immediate thing to me is information. Let us know what is the state of this community transmission. Bangladeshis have very little confidence and trust on the government provided information. Unfortunate, however, it may be, it is fact. Involving the public health officials, I mean those who are expert to gauge the depth of it and trying to look into various scenarios. When you generate scenarios, that is not going to be perfect. It is not going to come to fruition 100%. It is not. Fortunately not. There is always a worst case scenario, best case scenario, intermediary scenario. Figure those out. But putting people's lives at risk for the sake of the economy, that basic principle I have serious reservation. I think that's not. So for a lot, to cut short to this long answer, it should be those who have the public health expertise. They should decide based on unadulterated information. And then the second step is to address the question of public health first, and then consider what would be a phased opening of the economy. Target those which are more important, and then proceed to the lower. Until you reach there, keep the state support to those who are most vulnerable, those who are in the middle, because many times it is the people who are in the middle are lost in this conversation.
Thank you, sir. Sir, would you like to give any message to the younger generation who would like to partake, in order to save anything or anything that is possible for us to do within this quarantine or even after the pandemic ends? Do you have any message for the younger generation of Bangladesh?
Raisa, who gave me that authority to make this suggestion? But let me, thank you for asking. I mean, I'm honored and I'm very humbled that you asked me that question. I don't think I have all the things, all the all kind of information in front of me. But three things. The first thing is listen to the experts. Whatever needs to be done during this, common sense is good, but not always it helps us. Listen to the experts and try to understand the extent of this catastrophe. Putting yourself at risk is not a good idea because it is not only you who suffer. Unfortunately, your friends, loved ones will be suffering more. They might suffer twice because you, God forbid, if you are infected, they will have to take care of you, however far from it. And then if they get infected, imagine how much suffering they would go. So listen to the expert, understand the extent of the catastrophe. And if it is necessary to stay home, stay home. If it is possible to stay home, stay safe. Stay safe. That is the first thing at this point. On a longer term, that what I'm asking and what I would recommend, take a deep breath. Let us revisit what we have done. How have we contributed to this kind of a natural, in the sense that it came from the nature, but didn't we contribute something? Didn't our lifestyle actually contributed? Our support, even if I supported this so-called GDP-driven, economic growth, which decimated the nature, created an imbalance in the nature and the ecosystem. Let's take a deep breath, take a step back and think, is there another way? Third thing is, I would say that, there will be rhetoric. There will be so much rhetoric. We have talked about. One of them is that's what the world would look like, whether it's China, whether it's the United States. Let us get out of this binary. Think for yourself. Think in pieces. What kind of world do you want to live in? Today I'm having this conversation. Do you want to have a conversation like this? What kind of system would allow you to have this conversation? Think about that. Contribute to that. Let us join. You are not alone. I am not alone. However, wherever we are, however far we are on the same boat. We are on the same boat. Let us work together. And finally, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Stand up for the downtrodden. Be the voice of those voiceless. Why? Because it is your moral responsibility. It is my moral responsibility to speak for them. And that is what I would request. This is not a sermon. Please don't take it. This is my request. This is how I see it. I hope you see it that way. That is my request. Take a deep breath, revisit, reflect, retrospect. What can be done? What have we done? What can we do? You, as an individual, as a community, as a state, as a government, as someone in the society. That's what I'm suggesting. But thank you for that opportunity to reach out to everybody. It has been a pleasure and an honor. And I'm really, really humbled by this.
Thank you, sir, for giving us your time, because I think all of us needed to hear what you had to say. So thank you very much. Thanks to all the viewers who watched us today and actually took part into this conversation with Ali Riza sir, Ali Riaz sir. Sir, thank you so much for the time. We will have to end it today. We will meet you soon on the 26th with some other expert. Till then, have a very good night.
You too. Thank you to everybody.